I'm joined here by Maggie Harris, who has a new book coming out with Seren, and I'm just going to cut to magical computer land where I read her bio here. Sorry for that jolt. That was my dog bumping into the table. Alas, one can never find a single moment of peace, yet we still persevere. Hello, set from the future, other dimension. I'm here to insert Maggie Harris's biography commencing now. Maggie Harris is a poet, prose writer, and visual artist. Originally from Guyana, South America, she recently relocated to Kent after 10 years in Wales. She attended Kent University as a mature student, achieving a BA and MA, and started her career performing, running workshops, and teaching creative writing. She has worked for Kent Arts and Libraries, represented Kent in Europe, and was International Teaching Fellow at Southampton University. And unfortunately, those disturbing noises are still my dog. Okay, and now we're back. So we've done that bit. And I'm just going to ask her some questions. Okay, so how are you anyway, Maggie? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Yeah,
Mm.
I think so.
What do you think of this fog? It's been so weird, hasn't it?
Is it foggy?
Oh yeah, it's like this worldwide fog phenomenon thing. I don't know, but I'm too far down that conspiracy rabbit hole. Anyway, on better things. Could you say a little bit about your new book? How did it come about and just everything about it, themes, everything?
Everything about it. Oh, okay. Well, the thing is with when you've got a book, you don't really kind of think it's going to be a book when you start writing,
Hmm.
do you? You know, you just write the odd poem that inspires you
Yeah.
wherever you are. And increasingly it's going to be little bits that you write on your phone or wherever you are, just kind of random thoughts, unless you have the grand passion, right, let's sit down and do this. So it's all kind of really kind of chaotic, really. You don't really think about I'm writing a book. So I just wrote poems that I of topics, as they came. And these things take a long time, because I sent this collection to Seren probably about 2 to 3 years ago.
Mm.
And I was kind of worried that when it actually comes out, is it still relevant what you've written?
Mm.
But it's quite, I mean, the poems themselves took a bit of time, and then you kind of choose some and disregard some because you don't really kind of think of a collection. It comes to a point where you think, okay, well, are these this is going to be thematic? Does it actually say something? All those kinds of questions. But the key to me was the title poem, I Sing to the Green Hearts.
That's a beautiful title, by the way.
You like it?
I love it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'm just awfully romantic and I really love lyricism.
Mm.
I love folk tales, myths, beautiful poems like from Pablo Neruda.
I love him. He's fantastic. Yeah.
So there's a big
Yeah.
squishy like romantic-y part of me
Yeah.
that just loves language and just will explore something,
Mm.
any kind of point. Um, and one of the key poems that kind of led to me thinking about, oh, it might be a collection, was I've got a Rossetti painting on my bedroom wall, which I look at every day. And as we know, the Pre-Raphaelites painted all these beautiful women. They're absolutely gorgeous, and some died for their cause and all that sort of thing. So kind of started writing about what's at the edge of the painting, because there's this gorgeous woman sitting there with her lovely hair like yours, and her hands cusping a fallen leaf or a book or something like that. So I
Mm.
just started thinking about kind of pastoral and how that's actually written about and painted by, and my mind just went traveling along the wild.
Mm.
The tree she was sitting under, probably full of beetles. Um, she's probably sitting on an ant's nest. Those kinds of thoughts where you're actually seeing beyond the frame and just thinking about the wild.
Mm.
And when you think about how the plants that we've got in our gardens, and you think about botanical exploration and colonial travel and all that sort of
Mm.
thing, there's just so much to say. So the poems that occurred, kind of follow that trend. in a
Yeah,
way,
it's quite
you know.
interesting, the colonial or just like travel pathways of plants. I suppose just a plant existing tells a story somewhere.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I have written about this before, and there's probably one or two of the same kind of ideas in a couple of my older books. I mean, like I've got a poem called I Breadfruit, which is written in a very kind of made up language, kind of like 18th century. When you see it written, there's capitalizations where capitalizations might have been at a time. You know, some of these Victorian novels did capitalize certain things. So it was kind of exploration of how this bread, because the breadfruit is telling the story. And I don't know if you know the story about the mutiny on the Bounty,
No. Or I
when
might know it when you say it.
Captain Cook went off sailing with his breadfruit cargo, and there was a mutiny by Fletcher Christian, and the captain was put, I think, on a little boat and sent off. But the breadfruit was actually meant to be going to the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's lots of films and lots of stories about it. And even yesterday, I was looking at there's a place called the Garden Museum in London, which I've never been to, but apparently Captain Bligh is buried there. And this
Throw that.
article, okay,
Yeah.
this article was talking about the breadfruit, and I thought, oh, I wonder if they'd like me to send them my breadfruit poem,
Oh, cool.
which I
Yeah.
probably the sort of thing I do. I haven't done it yet. I've thought about it.
Mm.
But anyway, that was one of the ideas, you know, because when I saw the film, I know the story about Captain Cook. I didn't know that the cargo was breadfruit and how relevant that was to the Caribbean.
Mm.
So I thought, well, let this breadfruit tell us his story. And the funny thing was that when the breadfruit, the cargo, even another cargo, eventually got to the Caribbean to feed the slaves, because that's what it was going for, to feed enslaved
Mm.
people. Nobody liked it. I hate breadfruit myself. I don't like it. But now it's one of the most staple foods of the Caribbean.
Mm.
It's roasted and stewed and stuffed and all sorts of exotic things, you know. But so things like that really kind of get me really excited about writing.
I like
Yeah.
what you said about the edges of the Rossetti painting because I find that we as poets are always trying to get at the edge story, okay, so that's the main story, but what's around it? What's the underrepresented voice? And I feel like we always go for the edge. We're always trying to tell that story.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what do they say? Tell the truth and tell it slant.
Mm.
Is
Oh
that
yeah,
the
did they say that? That's
saying?
very fitting, yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, as writers, we're obviously very conscious of voice.
Mm.
Who's telling this story? You know, is it your truth or somebody else's? And people get very kind of um not confused, but readers can't sometimes confuse the writer with the narrator.
Mm.
So it's about how we actually construct this poem so that we're not saying that this is I, you know, this is another imagined self, another imagined voice. And a lot of that comes from studying Caribbean literature
Mm.
because I remember I was, what was I, about 39 when I went to UKC, and a lot of it was really fresh to me. A lot of it I felt so ignorant that I didn't know, you
Mm.
know, all these things. And reading Grace Nichols' I'm a Long-Memoried Woman was the first time I'd actually thought that about the voices of enslaved people,
Mm.
because you just had never at that point, you know, would have imagined that, because, you know, you're given this kind of imperialist narrative, um, you know, the voice of the colonists. And it's only when Caribbean people started to write back, to talk back, you know, they said about the empire, writing back, that those kinds of ideas were allowed to kind of break free and, you know, be
Mm.
creative and wonderful. And, you know, which is why Caribbean writing is just so exciting, even now. I
Yeah.
find I'm biased.
Do you
Mm.
ever like to sort of hide in your poems, like sort of like weave in and out? Because sometimes I find if someone asks me like, "Oh, is this poem about you?" If my mum asks me, I'd say, "Oh no, I have no idea what this poem's about." Say if someone else asked me, I'd say, "Oh, that is me." And I feel like we get a lot of freedom as writers sometimes to hide.
Yeah. I found being a writer has been tremendously not so much therapeutic, but it offers you such a space to speak about some of the most troubled situations that you've either experienced or that you know of, and how to actually make it into something that's a work of art
Mm.
in a way, because I think
Yeah.
that's the push. How can I write this pain, without being overly um, sentimental or
Yes.
judgmental,
Yes.
So yeah,
I
it's
think
that's.
sentimental and judgmental are the two main things. I'm glad you said that because those are the two kind of like dangers.
I remember once, because before I started writing in earnest, I was a visual artist and I did a few exhibitions around the place.
Mm.
And I remember having being part of an exhibition with some other artists in Margate Library many years ago. That's
Mm.
before they changed the whole flipping library. They used to have an art gallery upstairs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh my God, it was so beautiful. And we
Mm.
used to have workshops up there and all sorts of things. Anyway, one of my drawings, somebody left a really kind of sarky comment on one of my drawings,
Oh, that's rude.
which accused me of being, was it sentimental or full of herself, or who does she think she is? And I thought, what? Because it was just a drawing. I think it was a mother and baby. It was a mother and baby, and there was some poetry as part of the artwork.
Mm.
And I think it's the first time I thought that there's some really random people out there who are
Oh
just,
yeah.
and you really cannot let it get to you. You've just,
I really struggle with people outside of this little community because I just feel like I can't interact. I cannot interact with people as a whole.
I try to get on with most people. I try not to do anybody, I
Mm.
hope so. But I remember years ago, before I actually was writing and being an artist, kind of consciously defining myself as being an artist,
Mm.
I would kind of stumble being a mom and a person who sits in a playgroup and a playgroup with little kids and these strangers who are women who are also mothers who I don't know and I don't know what to say,
Oh yeah.
especially coming from Guyana because you just feel you don't belong anyway, and that was quite a struggle those years,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, and you certainly couldn't say, well, I like to write a poem.
Another one of your titles that I really like is 60 Years of Loving. I just think you
Okay.
have such a turn for titles. Do they just come to you? Are you just like get these sort of phrases and stuff? Because the
Yeah,
titles are all very, very beautiful or very nice or make you think.
I need them to sing, really.
Yeah.
60 Years of Loving was something that was a collection when I was 60.
Hmm.
And I wanted to do love poems because I'd written quite a lot about colonialism and different things, and I wanted to do something focused on love. But being me, it didn't turn out to be kind of lovey-dovey love. It
Hmm.
still went traveling and love. Um, the love poems were inclusive of loving countries and loving things and loving
Yeah.
music and feeling loved and just celebrating love. You
I
know,
remember saying to you when I read it, I remember saying to you like, oh, there's all different kinds of love in here, and I thought that was quite cool. It wasn't just, not that I thought it would be, but it wasn't just like man and woman or husband and wife or
Yeah, I thought it was important to do that because if not, it would probably be a bit stifling and a bit boring.
Hmm.
I mean, having said that, like I said, I'm a big self-romantic anyway, and I probably got pages and pages of gruesome stuff that I never share. I must burn it before I die. When I would get so kind of in love with even love itself, I suppose, and
Hmm.
and when you're kind of going through relationships as you're younger, the whole thing is so time consuming and body consuming and I thought what I need to get out of this, and so it's a bit kind of like floating out of a Netherland and of restrictive love
Hmm.
and think about our hearts and what actually makes this planet um as beautiful as it should be.
Hmm.
It's really on being kind and loving and appreciating and understanding and being slightly amoral as well. I quite like that word.
Oh, what do you mean by that? That's interesting. Yeah.
Amoral is when you actually kind of you don't really have any emotions.
Hmm.
Um, and I worked it out. I'm not saying I don't. I just thought it was quite interesting.
Hmm.
One of my collections after a visit to a botanical garden, which I wrote in Wales,
Hmm.
um, the title poem is about this kind of fairy-like creature who inhabits the gardens because the National Garden of Wales, I don't know if you've ever been, it's absolutely beautiful.
Hmm.
So when the gates are closed, it comes out, and she's really sneery and horrible and laughs at people and
Hmm.
people who water the plants and people who kind of do things in glass jars and I thought it was quite interesting just thinking about that. She hasn't got any kind of um right or wrong at all. It just is,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of life is actually like that.
Hmm. It, I just thought to ask you, do you get nervous before performances or not at all or a little bit or
Not anymore. I used to. I mean, I remember when I used to go to creative writing classes and the teacher, sitting around there and the teacher would say, okay, can you read us your poem? And I'd be terrible. My hands would be shaking, the paper would be shaking. And it happens to a lot of people. I've
Hmm.
even seen poets, even before they go on, get really, really nervous about
Yeah.
that now. No, so no, not so much anymore. Sometimes I worry about whether what I've chosen is right for the time and place,
Hmm.
so you might kind of quickly change
I
something.
change it last minute. Sometimes I go in and if it's a more jokey night or something, I think put the war poems away and
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. But as far as nerves are concerned, I think that comes with confidence and believing in yourself and acknowledging that even if somebody doesn't like any of your work or anything, it doesn't really matter. That's their
Hmm.
choice. They're being a critical person, fine.
Yeah.
Um, and another thing I read, which I thought found really helpful, was that people actually want to like you. They're there because they want to hear you,
Hmm.
unless they've been dragged there by their auntie or something.
Yeah.
No, and then sit there and go, oh, fucking poetry. Unless you've got that kind of person in the audience, I think people mostly sit there with a smile on their face and wait to see
Yeah.
who's going to know what they're going to say. And I think we should be thankful for those people, and they've come for a gift. Give them a gift.
Yeah, my kind of new resolution or renewed idea going forward, because I always had said it to some small extent, is go out and support even more. Like it seems obvious in a sense, but even if you're not reading and you can and you've got the availability, I want to go out and hear people. I want to experience people. I want to enjoy people because I just think that's so important. It hopefully gives them something. It gives me something.
I think that's mega, mega important, and that has been a really big part of my life. I mean, I'm a lot older than you. I went to Thanet College when I was 39. Um, what year was that? Around about 1990 or something like that. And there was nothing going on in this area. The poetry scene did not exist. You might have in universities a professor or somebody come and read you a poem in a class or something like that.
Mm,
Not the scene then was so different to this now.
mm,
And we started by having a writing group in an English class at lunchtime at Thanet College.
mm.
And then we had a show at the end, and our tutor said, oh, let's all wear black, and which is a bit kind of, but we didn't think it was uncool. I think we probably thought it was cool at that time. And we did it in the drama room, and people really loved it. Students came and stuff. So some of me in the group we said, why don't we do some more of this? So we started putting on poetry events like in Broadstairs Library. They also had a lovely upstairs
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
place, yeah, Margate Library, pubs, and and I just really got stuck into that thing of being an event organizer. And I formed a women's writing group, and so we had that going on as well. And it was always important for me as a tutor as well to encourage other people.
Mm,
And so that's always been a huge part of, like if somebody says to me, oh, how do I get published? Where do I get published? And I said, well, is that like your main thing? Because to me, the writing comes first, and then the community and kind of sharing your stuff with people
Mm.
physically, and that whole buzz. I mean, it's like having a party every time, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
it's lovely. Yeah.
people are actually going to listen to you because you can't do that at home. My lovely husband has heard so many poems that his eyes glaze now,
Same. Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
would he would say, because sometimes I'd write one very early in the morning. Oh, can you hear this? Can you hear? Oh, for God's sake! Is it? And he always used to say, Is it long? How, how
That's-
long is it?
That makes me laugh. Is it long? It's a classic question.
Yeah. So I kind of stopped.
Yeah.
I mean, he does now. Now he's really into his phone, so he spends more blooming time on his phone than I do. So if I have to interrupt that with a kind of, you sure want to just hear a little bit of this poem? What do you think? Okay. So for us to walk in a space that says poetry,
Yeah.
is like a whole other life.
Mm. Yeah,
It's really
absolutely.
meaningful. Yeah. And I think we all learn from each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
Um,
love that you talked with Jake the other day.
yeah,
I've
he's
only seen
great.
him a couple of times, but I really loved what he did at Margate Bookie. And he's just such a kind of lovely, calmish, kind of lovely person. It's really nice to hear what
Yeah.
he say.
Reading Kiskadee Girl, and I thought it presented such a positively multicultural landscape, especially because there's, so much talk around multiculturalism here. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it coming to get us? Or, obviously I don't think that, but it's just interesting to see that, that's how some of us always grew up and always knew the world.
Well, I think a lot of people have really, haven't they, all
Yeah.
over the world. I mean, I don't understand this kind of um the problems that people still have with
Yeah.
people from other cultures, and I just can't understand it because I mean, for the past how many millions of years we're on the planet, people are always moving about, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
From Aborigines, Maoris, everybody floated, they ended up in South America. Basically, you had your indigenous peoples who had been there from the start, just like Native Americans.
Mm.
And the ships roll in, don't they, with the conquerors? So, so you've got Europeans. In fact, I think that there's don't know the ratio of Indian people to African now, but in Guyana and Trinidad, they've got this very, very similar kind of formation
Mm.
because of that, bringing in of those large groups.
Mm.
And Trinidad is actually one quite violent place now. But anyway, we grew up just as children, with lots of people from all kind of colors and races, and celebrated, Indian holidays and Chinese New Year, and when I look back on it now, it all seems kind of dreamlike.
Yeah, I think that about my upbringing. Everyone was black, white, brown, every color, gay, straight, everything. I grew up in
Yeah,
Brighton in the 90s, and it's just like I don't get people that make such an issue out of it because it seems like such a joyful thing to me, and we had such a beautiful time there.
yeah. I mean, it's like if it's like a new thing.
Yeah.
We're having all this kind
Yeah.
of from different parts of the world, but and I mean, sometimes people don't even know, I mean, like how long England as a colonial power was in India for like 500 years.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I
Absolutely.
think you kind of think about that. I suppose it all comes down to the schooling and because they change things all the time, don't they? What's in the syllabus, representative of and all that sort of thing. Going back to kind of thinking about kind of multicultural background, there were things that went on that we children didn't know. There were kind of riots and, some quite awful things that we were protected from.
Mm. Do you ever worry about representing real people? Sometimes I get worried about someone recognizing themselves, and I always try and say, like, oh, so and so is imaginary, or oh, that's not about you, that's about another guy, or something like that. But I don't know, do you ever get worried?
It depends how important what you're saying is. I kind of faced that last year with one of the poems because I talked about a ruler who actually was a really kind of horrible person, and then he was voted out of this particular country, and I had his name in the poem to start with. And then I thought maybe I should just take his name out and just put it as something general.
Mm,
Because if rulers are only in power for like 4 years, then things change. So you have to kind of think about that really.
mm,
I think it's if you're writing about like family and that as well, that can cause problems. You have to be very careful how much or how little or how you represent someone.
yeah.
No, I did have that to face in Kiss Kitty Girl.
I remember you saying, yeah.
Yeah. I think there were some people probably rather I didn't write anything at all,
Yeah.
or that they existed or exist. So as an artist, I think we find that really hard to kind of how to tell the truth, especially if you're doing life writing,
Mm.
to represent other people.
I also think we are absolutely compelled to write what we have to write, and it can't really be any other way. And even if, things come what may, we have to write what we have to write, sort of thing.
Well, again, I think it goes back to the overall um kind of what you're trying to say, the kind of importance of it.
Mm,
Because one of the things that I said to some members of my family was that we think that we are obviously very private persons. I can understand that, but when we're dead and gone, we're actually part of a bigger thing.
mm,
No, so so if you want to talk about the colonial system you have to tell the truth.
mm.
You know, and I had problems as well with some of the words that I use because words change. How
Yeah, finding the language, yeah, absolutely, yeah. What would you like your legacy to be? How do you imagine your legacy if you think about
I
that?
had one. um, I think just for people to read my work. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and hopefully get something out of it. Um, One of my reading group, lovely people, sent me a wonderful, wonderful review of Kiss Kitty Girl the other day, and I was so touched by what she wrote. I'm going to ask her if I can put her words on my website
No, lovely, yeah.
because she just really loved it, and she talked in detail about um, as a kind of person from Guyana, but only I think she's just spent 1 year there, but she lives in England because there's lots of like second, third generations who come, whose parents have come from somewhere else.
Mm,
But that generation still want to learn about what it was like. So there's a lot of interest. They want to
mm,
travel back to the country, and it's called Creole.
yeah.
And there's another phrase that one of my favorite poets and historians, Kamal Brathwaite, called Nation Language.
Mm.
He was a Barbadian poet and historian, very, very powerful. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his work.
No.
Certainly, certainly, you'll be bowled over. Um, yeah. So nation language. So basically, it's about respecting the fact that language was imposed on a lot of people.
Mm,
Certainly English. I mean, growing up in Guyana, it's the only English-speaking country in the whole of South America, and that's only because the English were there for that amount of time. So
yeah.
everybody spoke English. But then you had dialects which were mixed with Portuguese, with different African languages, a lot of Indian words because there was a huge amount of Indian people who went over to work on the sugar
Mm,
estates in Guyana. So you've got this kind of mix.
yeah.
So, but that's a different to the kind of imperial language. And one of the issues we had when growing up was the literature and that we read and the kind of references all
Mm,
came from somewhere else. And one of the things that Kamal said is the hurricane doesn't roar in pentameter, which, if you think about that, that's just so powerful.
mm,
So yeah, coming back to non-standard English writing,
mm,
for me, it comes where it seems natural. It'll come if there's a memory or if there's a conversation going on. And poems as well. Poems work better in dialect, some of them, if it's a memory, because
mm,
remembering something and the rhythm of the language. it kind of is in your head. So you think about ways of fitting it in,
Yeah.
with the kind of layers of phrases and mixed. In fact, when I was writing Kiss Kitty Girl, it was first published by Kingston University Press, and one of the criticisms they had was that it was too poetic. And I thought, oh, okay, how do you actually make this like not so poetic? And
Mm.
they also thought that I should separate the Creole from the standard English.
Mm.
Well, and which well, I had to fight my corner on that one because
Yeah.
Chinese people just go in and out and in and out of
Yeah.
how they speak oral languages. So I wasn't going to have that. But
Yeah.
anyway, a lot of people write in dialect now, so you
Yeah.
know,
I'm now thinking there is a legacy of poetic sounding prose slash memoirs. I'm thinking of The Bell Jar. I'm thinking of Tracy Emin Strangeland, and I want to say The Lover by who is that? Duras. Can't remember her first name. But yeah, no, I think it's good poetic. I think poetic prose is some of the most beautiful things out there. It's like a polished jewel. It's just like you take that volume and you're just like, oh, perfection.
that's right. One of the writers I encountered at university is from Trinidad, and his name is Lawrence Scott.
Mm,
And he is just such an amazing writer. And the novel, specifically, I think was it first novel possibly called Witch Room. And like I said, he came from Trinidad, and they're just it's just so rich. If you have time to read it, because it had so many kind of elements of storytelling. There's a lot of Spanish lyricism in there as well. So you'd have a sentence like Maria Angelica um, Ermintude was waiting on the veranda that day, holding an ice cold rum. That kind of, you think, wow,
mm,
it was just so fascinating. But there was one particular phrase, piece of prose. I mean, it's a novel. It wasn't poetry, but very poetic. And there was a page which was full of his memory of going to see an old black man in his house, and it's just so full. He wrote it like poetic prose, and it's the kind of thing you just want to hear aloud because it was just so powerful. The
mm.
imagery, the rhythm, the rain on the roof, the this, the that, and I remember actually I took it and I wrote it out myself into a poem, and I sent it to him. That shows what creep I am. And Um, and I said, I just really love this, and I've made it into a poem. All I did was rearrange it, and he said, "That's really lovely, Maggie." You didn't mind. You didn't say, "How dare you do this to my love?"
Mm.
But I just got really excited about the way that he used language.
Do you have a favorite poet, do you think?
I think it must be Olive Senior.
Hmm. I don't know that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
She's Jamaican, and but there are quite a few in the front row.
Hmm.
Derek Walcott, Kamal Brathwaite, um, yeah, and well, so many. I mean, I've got hundreds of books of theirs. I'm trying to thin them out at the moment now, really. Yeah.
How do you find storing all your books? Because I mean, I've got like no storage left. It's crazy. I've got piles and piles and boxes of books. Are you having the same problem?
I have kept many books for many years, thinking that all my children will inherit a library. And I was quite excited by that thought until I realized that actually my children don't want my library. you know, I've got this they probably don't read much, but if they do, they read other things, and there's other ways of reading, as you know. So I am actually working through them and finding them good homes. Um, a friend of mine, Michi. Oh yes, you met Michi. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought she was
Um,
great.
yeah, she started putting together books for Benjamin Zephaniah Library up in Medway.
Yeah.
And I gave her some books, and I've still got some that I'm putting
Mm.
aside for her, which is to do with African Caribbean criticism and also poetry and
Yeah.
fiction and stuff. So I'm doing that, and I am sending some off to charity shop. But I'm still left with quite a few, um, and they'll just have to be with me, I think, for a while.
The good thing about poetry is you can read it again and again. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll just read the same poetry again and again and again, and I love it. It's almost like, but not quite like, when you just stick your favorite album on and you'll just listen to it again and again and again. It's like that with my very favorite poems. I do that with.
Yeah. Also, many books have been signed by poets, and it's really hard to give them away.
Yeah.
Once I found it's funny because I sent off for one of my books which was out of print, and I found it on Amazon. So I bought it, and when it came, I saw I had signed it for somebody. I thought, okay. I'm sure they didn't even read it, but it just felt a bit weird. So I thought I can never give away books that people have signed to me. But
Someone once came to one of my events once, and many years I bumped into him, and he told me all about how he went to this terrible event once, how horrible it was, how low the lighting was, how low the ceiling was, how stuffy it was, how bad everything was, and he forgot that I had run it. Not that I cared. I mean, to be honest, it's good to have the feedback, but it was just really funny. What continues to inspire you going forward?
I actually try not to write too much. I
It
know
seems
that's going
like you do,
to
though. That was another one of my questions. I was going to say, it seems like you really write a lot. I mean, I don't write much. I'll write like 7 poems a year, maybe.
well, don't forget I've been on this planet for a longer time than you,
Yeah, I suppose so. But
right?
it
So
seems like you write a lot of poems, which is a good thing.
yeah, I mean, I actually put my books together in. I'll show you.
Hmm.
I think obviously I haven't got the new one yet, but these are
I
my.
I've got a stack
Oh,
of
you've got some.
the
Okay,
Olympic
well
series. So yeah,
there's
yeah.
my little pile, and if I ever get depressed, I look at them and I think you have done something meaningful with your life. No, it's. I mean, I have been writing seriously since '90s.
Hmm.
Before that, because I went to creative writing class during the
Hmm.
80s in adult education and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I have got lots on my laptop that I have ideas for, and I start things and I leave it, and so I'm not sure where I'm going with the rest of it, to be honest.
Hmm.
I mean, I've talked about a second memoir, but I thought that might be a bit too intrusive. Um, and I did send something away to a journal, and they came back with all this criticism. Do this, do that, and I just, oh, cool. You know what I mean?
I said to someone the other day, I miss Set that used to just sit down and write her poems with a full heart and all full of love because I'm very grateful for the things that I've gotten and not many people do get them. But once you get that editor's voice in your head, you know, I'm not that girl anymore, in her, writing her poems and feeling so happy. I'm just like, that's crap. That's too this. That's too flowery. That's too, and it
Yeah.
ruins a little bit for me.
Well, one of the questions I think you asked Jake was that do we need um books anymore?
Yeah.
Because you were talking about spoken word, and I thought to myself, well, do you know, the two of them are actually two different things to me.
Mm.
Funny enough, because when I did my stuff at uni, and I got a research grant to go to the Caribbean. I was going to do a PhD, and it was going to be on the links between Black British poetry and Caribbean poetry. And what I did, I got involved with people in Barbados who were performers, and for the first time, I really started to enjoy the power of performance and think about performance, as an art by itself. So you can't really give it the same kind of criticism as you can. It's an art form.
Mm.
Um, and I think there's still room for both.
Mm.
People do like to read. Reading has changed, obviously. We can read in all kind of different ways. Some people still like to curl up with a book, or a Kindle. Um, so hopefully we've still got room to, carry on and hope that some people will read.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
what do you think of, or do you think there has been a sort of an explosion in poetry? Because I remember when I was a teenager and I was always obsessed with poetry, I used to go into Borders bookshops, and the only thing you could really see that wasn't Ancient, I mean, even though I love Ancient, was Blood Axe collections, and I love the Blood Axe anthologies. They were kind of my first books that I got. And if there was like a random poet in there, like one random poet, I'd buy that volume. But now it's like hundreds and hundreds of books.
Yeah, well, I think probably the poets themselves have been quite responsible for that because a lot of poets started up journals, magazines, small presses, just down to filling that gap and getting poetry out. Of course, it's got more popular as we know, and I think the more a crowd grows, the more people will be aware. So you will get this. It's people kind of demanded it. I think most people know there's no money in poetry, so
Oh, yes.
the guys that sit down and they do these journals, and do all the editing, and like Seb Riley, they do it out of love,
Mm,
as of many, and a lot of them have folded a lot of magazines. There is a lot out there. I think there's probably so many people being poets because the world is just continually and chaotic, and that is one of the places where we can find some sort of um peace in a way, even though you're writing disturbing things. It's the
mm,
kind of relationship between being an artist and creativity. I think that's a source
mm,
of comfort and a place where turmoil can be explored and you feel slightly better when you've written it out, and if you can share it with somebody else, as that's why all the comings and goings of events are so
mm.
important. It's a little bit like going to church in a way, as church used to be. I've often thought that because I used to go to church when I was little. I don't now. And the man on the pulpit, and the kind of passion, that you get, and all that sort of thing. I think kind of fill that gap in a way.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah, I think it is poetry or creating art is an act of faith, and I think it is very much like faith in that way. I think if faith is love and expression and those things, then poetry is kind of is filling the same gap. How does Thanet affect your writing, and does it bleed into your work?
Oh yes, it does. Um, I mean, I've written a whole book of short stories, based on Thanet. And my second collection is from Burbage to Broadstairs.
Mm.
So, that kind of chronicled it. Um, the
I've got
thing
this as
about
well, Margate by lunchtime as well. Yeah.
being a migrant, there's always like a part of me in my head is somewhere else,
Mm.
and which over the years has got to be a mythical somewhere else, because especially if I didn't know that before, it told me that when I went to Guyana last year
Mm.
after so many years, because it's just a totally different country, quite different from your memories.
Mm.
Um, so I always felt like an alien. But when I got the scholarship to go to Barbados, which I think was the latter part of the 90s, um, I really missed England. It's really weird because I got this wonderful scholarship and go for a year. I've got to talk to poets, and do all these fun things. And I mean, of course, it wasn't as simple as that. But I really missed some things. So I'd got kind of English over the years. I mean, things like just going into a pub and having a glass of wine and nobody will think anything of it. I'm not saying you can't go into a place in Barbados, but I think I just started to think of it as home after all those years. You're kind of quite glad to kind of go home because you've just got all these kind of English things that you've got accustomed to.
Mm. I
So
think I think we as the English or just say that's what we are. When we go somewhere else, that's when we feel our most English. Like if I'm in Europe or if I'm, with Americans or something, I'll be like, oh, I feel like I'm being so English. And then when it's just me by myself, I'm like, do you know, I can't get on here. I don't know if I'm English, so
I suppose it's British, really, isn't it?
yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of English.
British, yeah.
Yeah, but I think I hold on to being Guyanese, and wherever I go, I am Guyanese. Um, but it's I mean, I only lived in Guyana for 17 years, and yet that is just so imprinted on me that if I kind of lost that definition, I would kind of question myself, really.
Mm,
Um, and I was talking to somebody the other day about the idea of belonging, because there's a lot of that theme that's explored by writers from Caribbean. That kind of changes me over the years, really. I don't really kind of think about belonging. I quite like the idea that we can actually go anywhere in the world and just soak up what there
mm,
is to feed us, and that kind of perpetual exchange of cultures. And
mm.
so I think the kind of belonging thing is a bit of a harness. I
Yeah.
find it that now anyway.
I like talking to you about it because it's like you're not doom and gloom about it and you're not like, you know, anxious about it. I think that's good, really.
I think I've kind of grown out of that kind of way of thinking in a way. Yeah,
Mm,
which people might disagree with. Some people might find they really need a tribe. They really need a kind of big B to kind of define them.
mm.
I'm just a floating spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of myself as like a floating spirit slash chameleon, but I think like the downside is sometimes I kind of like I'm not quite stuck in anywhere. But generally I think it has pros. What's your writing process? Do you get the bolt of an idea and just get it all down, or do you work on it over time?
A bit of both, really. I have got several unfinished poems on my phone, and thinking about where to actually take them. The trip to Guyana last year, um, I haven't really written a lot about it because I didn't want to be the sort of person who goes back to a country after they had mostly a comfortable life and say things about it as some sort of voyeur.
Mm,
So I need to kind of work, what do I actually have to say? I mean, I've got some really nice photos that I talked to Mitchie about, probably about
mm,
doing some sort of project together. And I'm thinking about the fact that not you don't have to be producing books all the time. Quite
yeah.
nice to kind of seek different ways of of talking about that journey, either through podcast maybe or some kind of multi collaborative thing.
Mm.
So that's where my head is at the moment, thinking, what else to do that might have some relevance as
I
well.
know, I know we've already spoken about it a fair bit, but yeah, just to say again, it's books are great, but it's nice that we all kind of have this feeling of like, let's break out and just do as much as we can. And I think media and changing media has a lot to do with that. Social media, alternative media.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I think we have to move with it because if you're a writer and you want, are you a writer because you write, or are you a writer because you have things you want to say and you want people to respond to?
I always say that, and I always think sometimes you can definitely tell if someone writes because they want to write or if they write because they want to say something. But I would say when I started, I just wanted to like to just matter and to just have something be important to
Yeah.
even in my own life. I just wanted to hold something and think like, this, my whole life's not crap, something means something.
I mean, it's a go-to place, isn't it? It kind
Yeah.
of defines us, gives us a place that's got nothing to do with anybody else.
Yeah.
Um, and I would be totally lost without it, actually, I think,
100% same.
you know. I mean, I don't do so much artwork anymore because I found that quite restrictive in a way, kind of 3D, two-dimensional thing. But sometimes I go to exhibitions and I think, I need something now. I really want to do this, want to do that. I mean, of course, if you had 6 lifetimes, you always explore all these different things you want to do,
We're
don't
the
you?
we're the sort of people that if we had 6 lifetimes, we would just be constantly writing, making, traveling, and just doing it,
Yeah,
doing it, doing it,
yeah,
Um,
that's right. Yeah,
yeah. Did you write much when you were in Wales? How did that affect your outlook?
I did actually. I mean, looking back on my work, I think there's probably three bits of work, three books that have come out of my time there.
Mm.
And even I got quite lonely when we moved, and there were lots of things that went wrong. It's the landscape was just so stirring, and some of the people that I met were just so wonderful that I wouldn't have done half the writing that I've done if I hadn't made that move. Even though some things went wrong, we ended coming back here, but it's vital. And now, I mean, the book is being published by Sarah,
Mm.
and I had poems in there that related to Wales and which are quite important,
Mm.
So I'm really glad to kind of, have that be included and have them say yes, because it's quite hard to get published by a good publisher.
Mm. Oh yeah,
When
definitely.
I say good publisher, I mean, like, like a proper recognized publisher. And
Mm.
like I said, they had the poems for about 2, 3 years.
Mm.
So I'm just really happy that they published them. And then Wales, and it had to be published for me in my mind. Those poems needed to be published by a Welsh,
Mm.
really, because, they're so much part of it, even though the poems journey on from Wales, and it includes lots of other things. But that kind of connection with the landscape and of being somewhere else and, yeah.
Do you feel removed from your poetry? Because when I look back at my poems, I just think, who was that person and what was going on? And I just feel like there's such great distance. I feel like I love those poems. Most of those poems I absolutely love, but I wouldn't write like that anymore.
Well, sometimes your views change, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's any that I kind of don't think still represents me. I think it represents me,
Mm.
part of me. Um, and also you kind of got to let it go.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that when I first got published, which was quite scary because you're thinking, oh my God, people are actually your first book. People are actually going to read this and they're going to think about it and they're going to say, and th what am I doing? And then I thought, take a deep breath. It's just like a child turning 17, 18. Just let them out the door. Just let
I just remembered something funny. Me and you were together somewhere and we had our books out and someone came up to me and I said, "Oh, would you like a book?" And they said they looked at it for ages and then they just finally said, I'll just take a picture of it." And then they walked away.
Oh God.
Oh, I think that's
But
funny.
I hate having to sell books because you kind of stand there like a loony and people
Yeah.
in at it and and they look at another one and think, oh God, be
You're
me.
very on the spot. It's not a nice place to be, really. Just like
No,
buy my
no.
books. I was going to say to you about your art. It kind of makes me think of like the illustrations that people do of like the Lord of the Rings and stuff, like the elves and the elves bringing the boats in, going through Galadriel's realm and stuff. Do you think that? It seems like there's a lot of fantasy.
Yeah, I am, yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I needed to stop doing it and write, because I think I was fixated, having been read, and seen like Beardsley and all the fairy tale drawings. They're so connected with me and my childhood, because reading, I just ate books, and if they had illustrations, they just fed my mind, so I couldn't
Mm.
move on from there. And yeah. And I wonder now, if I was to start doing some artwork, what it would be. I think I don't know. I don't know. So because I did mostly black and white work as well.
Mm.
Mm.
How do you feel writing about places that are gone now? Because the experience is that you remember a place as it was, you write about it, you go back and it's not there anymore.
Well, that happened to me with my house.
Oh, really?
Oh, my house that I grew up in, yeah. I mean, a friend of mine who used to go back to Guyana quite often, she had said to me that, I don't think your house is there, but couldn't remember because she left when she was 12. But when I went, and it's just as she said, there was just a patch of grass. And that felt weird. I felt like I'd never existed, you know? And especially if you read Kiss Kitty Girl and all the kind of kids growing up and all that sort of thing, it's hard to think that all those memories and all those happenings and that place no longer existed.
Mm.
It's really like a death, and I don't know how differently I would have felt if the house had been still there, even if it was strange, if there's people living in it, all that sort of thing. But to be nothing, and it's still nothing. When I went last year, it's still nothing. It's got a fence up around it now, and I'm thinking about a little baby footsteps and maybe a little gold bangle my sister had lost. Where is it? Coconut tree's gone. The mango tree's gone. The dungs tree's gone. And I'm thinking, what? Who am I? It's
I think that about Iran, and the thing is that technology and globalization is changing places so fast, it's such an extraordinary speed that, that Iran is gone. And I think my family think I'm a bit loony, like, oh, she's banging on about Iran again, get on with your life. But I think we do tend to be more sensitive as writers, don't we? And
how long did you spend part of your childhood there?
I was born here. I lived there till I was 2, and then we went back every summer. So we spent 6 weeks each year there, and it was just great because my dad's family lived in a rural area near the third biggest mountain in the world. And it was just mountainous, farmland,
Oh,
chickens, wolves, just
wow,
amazing,
wow.
amazing, amazing, amazing. That's why I'm just like, whenever I turn on the news, like even yesterday, me and my daughter took out a library book on Iraq, and I was like, they could have included one picture about, geography. It doesn't all have to be about war. So I just find it quite misrepresented.
Oh. Guyana, being so kind of specific, is a very romantic allure to continually refer to. And I know this. I don't need anybody to say, well, it's all right, but that's shit, rather something else, you know. But I mean, having been in this country for so many years, I mean, there are things here that have changed. Even when we lived in Wales, every time I came back, something had changed. Tesco's had gone from the high street in Broadstairs. That's gone. They've covered up the whole of Westwood Cross with buildings, and I can remember fields and the mental hospital up there and all the farms and everything. So all of
Mm.
that is in my memory as well. Things that we're losing, and now
Mm.
with all the building and everything, is I find it a nightmare actually.
Oh, do you? Yeah.
I
Planet's
find it a
changed very
nightmare.
rapidly, hasn't it? And then there's like the DFL side, whether you like it or not. And then even I'm like a new addition to Thanet in a sense because we had to leave Faversham because we were like priced out or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah, so even Thanet is just changing all the time.
And also, I mean, it's the bigger question, isn't it? It's about ecology, it's about green fields, it's about just nature just being swamped by concrete and
Yeah.
insects and butterflies and birds. There was a little thing I saw in Guyana where there was a wildcat that somebody killed, and it broke my heart because the rainforest has got a huge road going through it now to Brazil, and there's like this red scar, you know. And anyway, these people killed this wildcat. I don't know if it was a lynx or what.
Mm.
And they were saying things like, "Oh yeah, we had to kill it because of the children." And I'm thinking, yeah, but you moved there, and like these animals were there first.
Mm.
You know,
Sounds like that could be there could be quite a good poem in that.
yeah, I know. I kind of did it with one of the poems called Lilith because recently there were two links that were lost and that
Yeah,
got.
I've been seeing about this. I've also anyway, no, you tell me about yours. Yeah.
Well, it's just that they had two links in Borth, which is near Aberystwyth.
Hmm.
These people bought this zoo and had these links and they got away. And instead of actually trying to use like a sleeping drug or something like that, they just hunted it. It was on a caravan site and they shot her. And her name
Horrible.
was Lilith. And I've got a poem called Lilith, which is in the book. But it just broke my heart. And the other one, I think, was mishandled. So that one died as well. So there's two of them just died for no reason.
Lilith is a very evocative title as well, isn't it? Just so much connotations with that. I've been seeing this thing like a Black Panther roaming roaming England as well. Have you been seeing that? That's
They've always
crazy.
got, they've always got ideas like that. There used to be a story like that in Wales. And I remember when Steve and I, because we used to drive around the country quite a lot, he said, I'm sure I just saw some. I'm sure I just said, no, you didn't.
I'm sure I saw
Oh,
something in Broadstairs, but I'm not all there, so
I'm not all there either. So join the club. I
Yeah.
wish there were more panthers.
Yeah, we just need to get on our boat and just go into Middle Earth and not worry about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful? Then I could do all my drawing of trolls and fairies and don't feel that I haven't moved on.
our six lifetimes of art. What was your first writing experience that when you said, I'm a poet? Was it a slow transition or did you have one?
So slow transition. I started as a teenager, but I was trying to write songs because I was just besotted by songs
Mm.
and make up music and sing it. But then I didn't write music, so they ended up as poems, and high school you study poetry, and I slowly really started to love some of the poems and then I played around with stories and bits. But I don't think I thought of myself seriously until I went to creative writing classes. And when I wrote a small piece called Conch Shell in that class, which went on to be Kiss Kitty Girl. So I think that was the moment that I thought, okay, maybe I can be a writer. It was in that space, you
Mm.
know, at our age, yeah.
Could you read some poems for us, please? Have you got
Ooh,
some? Maybe.
okay. Any particular? I mean,
Um, maybe it would be nice to have some upcoming ones if you're allowed to share them, from your new book, or maybe just one and then maybe another of your choice.
I read this one, which was actually first published by Seb in
Mm.
Seaside Gothic, and it's called The Migration of Ghosts. You need my glasses on. In the country where I was born, they said the dead couldn't swim, and migration frees you from their ghosts, their constant whimpering on what you should or shouldn't have done. There in the land of massacre, there's still a scramble to leave, body or no body, and some of them hitch rides on mobile phones or tankers, while some try floating, as they heard it might help with questions of identification. I saw them myself in the Azores, their bones granulated to form coral, and even on the sea they gleam with what one might describe as a wavering hue. But I was young then and fanciful, and not everything I say is true. Here in my final years I could live nowhere but the sea. I tried the country once and all it did was eat me. So I've managed to build a body without bones, and these sea breezes are my constant. Dress me at their whim, disguise my intent. The jewelry I wear is free. I walk these sands every Thursday and listen to the echoes of my empty feet. The birds can hear it too, even the gulls avoid me. The deafness of old age is misdiagnosed. What's happening is your hearing is actually sharper. Not the things you want to hear. But you don't have to believe me. Not everything I say is true. You don't want to hear the desperate bitterness of crabs or imagine the beautiful bones of the boy you loved sprinkled across a foreign shore, or incarcerated in some fancy casket his family insisted he have. Still, I listen out for him every Thursday, watching the waves. I seal his death with a kiss. He has to find me. Sometimes I come to see the lighthouse flash. It reminds me of voyages I wish I'd taken, or those I didn't. In the end, all we can do is walk and carry the sands in our feet to leave at the doors of the lonely. But don't listen to me. I was always being accused of too much fancy.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, I was inspired to write that for Seaside Gothic a couple of years ago, and yeah, it's really strange, kind of slightly immoral, like we were talking about immorality,
Mm.
um, so
The
yeah.
last issue of Seaside Gothic actually had a poem by a Scottish poet who wrote as they would speak. So, yeah, that kind of made me think of our conversation about, writing in a dialect or writing in the way you speak. And it also made me think of Benjamin Zephaniah because he did that a lot as well.
And no, I think this one's too long. I'll read you a short one. I tend to write long poems.
You do, don't you? You do write on the longer side, but not that that's a bad thing. But I think people write normally shorter poems, don't they? Well, not normally, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'll read you a poem from 60 Years of Loving, which is called Saatchi's Song. And I've chosen this one because there's a lovely book, which is a lovely book, a book called Monster, which has just come out by another writer. Um, and I can't pronounce her first name. I think it's a maybe Adisa Benson. And she writes about Sarah Bartman, who was a woman from a Khoikhoi woman who was referred to as a Hottentot.
Hmm.
And she was made to be a freak show attraction, because she was quite a large lady. And they brought her from Africa to England and France, and she was just treated really, really.
I think I know who you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's quite a lot of information about her now, but this I wrote many years ago, actually, because 60 Years of Love, I mean, that's 10 years ago. So I was really glad to see the current book that's come out, which is, quite a lot about her. But this was mine. It's called Sartre's Song. If I could sing you a song of the taste of salt past Madagascar. On the Cornish coast grows tremendous wild a fig, the Hottentot. So too they called us, convoluted our tongue, rechristening each stone and clod of earth, naming. From oceans far they sang of it, came in their hundreds with pickaxe and Bible, book and prod, charcoal and paint, rope and ink, mapping. This tale you will not find in libraries, but in signs carried on the wind, in cargo holds, the empiricism of men. One can no longer imagine weeks and months of sail, the struggle of the mouth to describe such wonderful, fanciful things they christened strange. If I could sing, I would sing you a song of the taste of salt past Madagascar, the coal and soot of London town, the wolves of men whose eyes burn the circle round me, France and men who journeyed my body, pen, paint, penis. Now I am a glory bee. Home, they said, but on the Cornish coast grows wild and glorious a fig, the Hottentot. It is hard to contain, I believe. Honestly, see, I just saw that on Blue Peter. They on Blue Peter, because they've got this shrub called the Hottentot, and it grows on Cornish cliffs. They've got to go down on climbing ropes to
Hmm.
clear it from the cliffs. And the strange thing about it being called that, and Hottentot is not the kind of language that you use to describe Khoikhoi women. So, it just all sorts of things were playing around in my head really when I read the story of Sarah Bartman. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Wonderful. And it kind of goes back again to telling the marginalized story, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, I when I took the Benson book into my reading group last Saturday because I shared one of her poems, nobody had heard of Sarah Bartman. And that just goes to show because when you find a huge story there, and such a tragic story, and you think, why doesn't everybody know about this? It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people can only handle so much. I find they can handle one or two of such stories, but if you just say to them, unfortunately this is extremely common and it's happened in some way thousands of times, the
Yeah.
mind just can't. And then at that point shuts down.
Yeah. And of course, when you're writing about real people, and as we were saying, you have to think, how am I going to actually, you know, start, how can I kind of represent, a real person? So I kind of put it in her own voice in a way, so
Anyway, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
thanks very
Yes.
much for
And I'll
inviting
see you for
me.
lunch tomorrow now. And I'll see you soon, Maggie. Thank you so much for talking to me and good luck with the book coming out.
Thanks very much.
Take
Cheers.
care. Bye bye bye.